Courtside Monday.
Of Courtside Monday, and it's not like I'm going to be struggling to find anything to talk about. Didn't get to talk to you last week because the Seattle Kraken were in Game 7 of their series against the Dallas Stars. They lost, so now we're back. Chris Burkhardt here with you. As always, follow me on Twitter at Chris J. Burkhardt. And when I left you last time, we were all debating what was going to happen on NBA draft lottery night, but now we know the Blazers did end up getting the third overall pick in the upcoming 2023 NBA draft. We will talk about that a little bit later in the show because now it's going to be the talk of the town until, the June 22nd NBA draft. So for the next month, that's what you're going to talk about. What are the Blazers going to do with that pick? Are they going to use it? Are they going to trade it? Are they going to move out? They going to move up? Like, who knows? Like, what is going to happen? We'll talk about it here at about 6:20. We got playoffs to get to, and an NBA legend hangs up the shoes for the final time. We'll talk about that today, as well as, of course, it does tie to the Blazers. Now, the NBA playoffs, so that's what we got to talk about first. No, Siri, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to my loyal listeners. Got to take the watch off now. But we got to get to the NBA playoffs because, boy, howdy, is there a lot to talk about there. Right now, the Lakers taking on the Nuggets in Game 4 of that Western Conference Finals series. And if you would have told me, or I would have told you, a week ago that the Denver Nuggets would hold a 3-0 series lead over the Lakers, I don't know how many people would believe me. I don't know how many people would, but that is where we're at. And this is for LeBron James, the first time trailing 3-0 outside of the NBA Finals in his entire career. So this is uncharted territory for him. And as you're well aware, no NBA team has come back from a 3-0 deficit to win the series before. I was fortunate enough as a Red Sox fan to watch what happened in 2004. The Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, ALCS, Yankees up 3-0, and the Red Sox did the unthinkable. Just a bunch of idiots, as they called themselves. They didn't know any better. They just went out and they shocked the world. It's a great documentary on ESPN, by the way, 3 nights in October. It's a must-watch for, I think, any baseball fan, but especially a Boston Red Sox fan. I still get chills watching it. And so you never know. You never know what could happen because, I mean, that would be like the most LeBron thing of LeBron things to do, would it not? Like, not only am I constantly compared to MJ, not only do I have, all these championship rings, I led my team back from a 3-0 deficit in the Western Conference Finals. It's a very LeBron. Wouldn't be shocking if he did that. But to do it, he has to get back Nikola Jokic and perhaps one of the most balanced teams in the entire NBA in the Denver Nuggets, who, again, I always like to tell all my friends, so they want to get, who did you have winning it? No, I got the receipts. That's the good part about hosting radio now and then, and Chad letting me be a talking head on this platform, is these episodes are recorded. And they're put up on the internet in podcast form. So when you say something, for better or for worse, there are receipts. So the whole world knows that I did pick the Denver Nuggets way back at like the beginning of the year to come out of the West, and here we are.
He did.
So, see? There's the confirmation. They're so well balanced. I mean, from Jokic on down, we had the caller earlier talk about how big their front line is. I mean, you look at Jokic, you look at Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. healthy makes a huge difference from them. Jamal Murray, I think people honestly forget that prior to that knee injury, he was one of the best up-and-coming guards in the NBA. Then he misses, a year and a half, almost 2 years of action trying to, rehab that thing and get back into game shape. And here he is. He's turning the corner, and he's playing like one of the best guards in the NBA. And everyone thought it was crazy when, that quote came out about him, saying he's one of the best. And he is. He absolutely is. He's putting that on full display, and you pair that with one of the best players in the history of the game. That's Nikola Jokic, and their depth and great coaching. I mean, it's all coming together for the Denver Nuggets right now, although they do trail the Lakers 29-22 with about a minute and a half left in the first quarter. But this is a team that needs it. This is a team that hasn't won it before, has no NBA championship to their name. which would be huge for them in a city where they kind of play, third or fourth fiddle. Denver, as Chad knows, that's a town that is near and dear to his heart. That is a football town. It's like the top three teams in Denver are the Broncos, and the Broncos. Then you can sprinkle in the Avalanche, then the Rockies, probably the Broncos again, and then the Denver Nuggets. It is a football town. Now the Rockies, they've played in World Series. Broncos, they've won championships. The Avs are one of the best hockey teams in the NHL. They were the champs last year. Nuggets, no NBA title to their name. So this would be absolutely huge for them to stamp their ticket into the NBA Finals. Now, who will they be playing in the NBA Finals is, that's the question, right? It's Boston and it's Miami. Now, again, prior to the playoffs and the season, I picked Boston to get out of the East. Well, when you're right 50% of the time, you're wrong 50% of the time, because right now they do not look like a championship contender. They don't look like a team that should be in the Eastern Conference Finals at all, because the Miami Heat are absolutely tearing them apart. I think it is an absolute masterclass in coaching done from Portland's own Eric Spoelstra, as Miami, much like Denver, has taken a 3-0 series lead in the East. Now, you look at the Western Conference, and I feel like at times you're like, okay, you can see that the Lakers are gassed. You can see that LeBron, maybe the age is catching up to him. They do lack a little bit of depth, but between him and AD, they're just gassed. Doesn't look like they've mailed it in, though. Boston looks like they have mailed it in. They have just said, okay, well, time to focus on 23-24, because this ain't it. And there's so much to it, too, that makes it interesting, because talent-wise, on paper, granted, we all say this, championships aren't won on paper. That's why they are played. But on paper, this is a team that should be right where they are, but not down 3-0. You look at Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year last year. Jaylen Brown, one of the best two-way wings in the NBA. Jason Tatum, same thing. Obviously, great IQ and great all-around presence on the floor from Al Horford. You got guys like Grant Williams, who's good. Robert Williams, who's good, even though he hasn't been playing as much. Peyton Pritchard, who's a good rotational point guard. Obviously, Malcolm Brogdon, sixth man of the year type player. They got depth. They got good players. What are they lacking? When you look at the roster, you look at the team, you're like, what are they lacking? Oh, it's coaching. It's the guy who leads it all. That's the big difference. He's just I think with Joe Mazzulla, you're looking at a guy who's learning on the fly. He's a rookie head coach, just like Chauncey Billups was, right? Learning on the fly. Difference between he and Chauncey was learning on the fly with a team that was had aspirations of making the playoffs, right? Joe Mazzulla is learning on the fly with a team that has aspirations of winning the whole thing. And this job kind of fell into his lap after the behind the scenes stuff that was going on with Ime Udoka, who has now landed in Houston. And there's all sorts of rumors of what will go on with the Rockets now. Maybe James Harden goes back there. They trade some of their picks and some of their young guys to try to get some talent and kind of go win now mode again behind James and Ime. But I think it's clear and evident that Ime had that locker room. He had that locker room. He knew what to say and specifically knew what to do defensively with all that defensive talent. Mazzulla, on the other hand, not so much. Not so much. I think that's one thing that some coaches have to learn, is how to get that locker room, how to keep that locker room, and how to do the right things and say the right things as to not lose the locker room. Now, after game 3, he was asked specifically about that. Do you think you've lost the locker room? And he was like, yeah, I think I have. I mean, that's good. I guess it's good. Some people see it that way, that he put a little bit of blame on himself. So, okay, that's good. You need that. You need to take accountability. But at the same time, with possibly one game left in your entire season, now's not the time to be losing locker rooms, guy. You got to figure that one out. So then what happens with the Celtics here? So should the Celtics fall to the Miami Heat, whose half of their team is undrafted guys who did not go in the first and second round of their respective drafts, who are out there just playing their tails off. They're led behind Himmy Butler. That's right, Himmy Butler, because he is him. I don't think there's a player that's been better in the NBA playoffs than Jimmy Butler. He has been unreal. And one thing I love about his game is something that Dwight always talks about is, did they make their team better? Did they make their team better? Now, granted, I don't know if he gives Damian Lillard enough credit for making the team better, because I do think Dame does. But Jimmy Butler can go out there and not have the greatest box score game. What do you have in game 3? Like 12 points or something like that. But he just affects the game in so many little ways. It makes everybody around him better. And defensively, always in the right spot. And not only that, he's your goon. Like, your best player on your team is the guy that goes out there and is not afraid to tussle. Like, his little getting down on one knee and calling the timeout right in Al Horford's face, like Al Horford did in game 1, throwing it right back at him. It's like, I love it. I love it. Give me the storylines. Give me the drama. When people are like, oh, no, just play the game. We don't need it. No, this is you watch to be entertained, man. And Jimmy Butler, he is all entertainment all the time. The only unfortunate part about this run for the Miami Heat is I'm pretty sure Blazer fan can put to bed any hope that they had, even though it was kind of a ill-fated hope to begin with, of getting Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo in a Blazer uniform next year. I don't think that one's happening at all. Because not only are they doing this run right now and on the cusp of going to the NBA Finals, I mean, they're doing this without guys like Victor Oladipo, who was a good rotation player for them until he hurt his knee again, which is so unfortunate for a guy who has battled so hard to get back on the court multiple times already. They're doing this without Tyler Hero, who is probably their best go-to scorer all year long. He goes out with an injury going after a loose ball in the first round series against the Bucks, and he hasn't played. So you're getting guys like Caleb Martin and Max Strus to step up. Duncan Robinson, who has been an afterthought at times in this rotation, stepping up and having 20-point games like he did in game 3. Like, you're getting it from everybody. It's a well-balanced team, and it all comes to one thing: coaching. They are a well-coached team. And we talked about this on the morning show the other day, and Brendan and I got into an argument because the question was, if Eric Spoelstra wins the NBA Finals this year, does he jump Pop and Kerr on the list of the greatest coaches in the NBA and this and that? I'm like, he already has. Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. Oh, but rings matter, Chris, and this and that. And dude, yeah, okay, Kerr got some. I'll give him that. He also had the best team the NBA's ever seen outside of the Bulls. Pop, yeah, he had rings too, but again, he had teams that were just stacked with talent left and right. Eric Spoelstra. Oh yeah, he had the big 3, and then they started Mario Chalmers next to him with no depth, and Mike Miller, and the ghost of James Jones, and Shane Battier, who was good defensively, but also he was Shane Battier. Yeah, he won with that team. And please, I implore you, go look at the depth chart of the Miami Heat team that he won his first championship with. It was top 3 heavy, and outside of that, it wasn't much. But even so, rings only tell part of the story, because it's interesting when we're getting into an argument about who's the best coach. You want to say, oh, but the rings, Chris, the rings. Yeah, but how come the rings don't come into play when we're talking about the best player to ever play the game? Right? Because if we're talking about the rings, it ain't MJ. It ain't MJ. Bill Russell's the best player to ever play the game. Right? Oh, yeah, but the bigs, he played it. Don't give me that nonsense either. He played in an era where the bigs were good. Okay? And every player played to their era. It is what it is. But Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. Talent-wise, they weren't better than the Milwaukee Bucks. Coaching-wise, they were. Talent-wise with the Knicks, probably a wash. Roster-wise, probably a wash, honestly. Coaching-wise, he outcoached Thibodeau. And now here they are in the Eastern Conference Finals. And talent-wise, on paper, again, these things aren't won on paper. The Boston Celtics are a better team than the Miami Heat. What is the one big difference where Miami has a giant gap between their option and Boston's option? Head coach. So shout out former Miami Heat video coordinator, now head coach, who I don't think needs an NBA Finals victory to cement it, but that would help. I think is one of the greatest coaches the NBA has ever seen. All right, we are going to take a quick break here on Courtside Monday. When we come back, the Blazers got the number 3 overall pick in the NBA draft lottery. What are they going to do with it? We're going to talk about the options that they have. And as always, if you want to chime in, tell me what you think, hit us up, 503-248-0620. Chris Burkhardt here on Courtside Monday on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Ooh, things are getting heated in Los Angeles. Look at LeBron James giving a little forearm shimmy here to Aaron Gordon because Aaron Gordon locked his arm. Oh, man, they're going at it. LeBron, he's teetering on the edge, man. Chestnut checkers are getting in his head. Chris Burkhardt here on this nice Monday evening, Courtside Monday. Bringing it to you. Plenty to talk about. But like I said, things getting heated there in the Laker-Denver series. Lakers up 43-36 here in Game 4 of their season on the line as they currently trail the Denver Nuggets 3-0 in this series. But if we've seen this story play out before, what you don't want to do is poke the bear, kind of like Dylan Brooks did. And LeBron is the bear, so don't poke him. Be careful what you wish for, because wasn't it Toby Keith had that old song, I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. Yeah, that's all LeBron needs. He just needs that one moment. And unfortunately for the rest of the world, he's still as good as he once was because he's the king. Good series here, though. Absolutely. Aaron Gordon, love what he's doing for the Nuggets as Jokic backs down the king and says, yeah, I'm just going to take a couple buckets here. Boom. Easy buckets. It wasn't King James he was on, though. Anyway. Yep, Nikola Jokic leading the Nuggets, trying to get to the NBA Finals. Who's leading the Blazers to wherever they want to go next year? That's a big question all the way around. Who's leading them? Where do they want to go? Where are they going to go? What the heck is going on? Because there are multiple routes for the Trailblazers to take. It all needed some dominoes to fall. And perhaps the first one fell last week when the ping pong balls spelled out the number 3 overall pick for the Portland Trailblazers, which is not the lucky number 1 spot and Victor Wembanyama, but all things considered, if you were going to get another result, the only other result you wanted was number 2 or 3. And in fact, 3 might even be a more enviable spot than 2 when it comes to trading those picks, because now you get an idea of who's in front of you, what the market is, who has what to offer, what you can offer. There's so much out there, and there's plenty of options for the Blazers. And it all comes down really, though. There's plenty of options, but those options are all come from 3 main branches. And really the 3 main branches that the Blazers have to do now, possibly within the next month leading up to the draft and free agency and all that, is option number 1, which is probably the preferred option of myself and many of the people I talk to. But option number 1 is trade the pick and try to get as much talent as you can. Option number 2 is use the pick, especially if Scoot goes number 2 and Brandon Miller is available at 3. That's option number 2. Option number 3 is the option no one wants to have to deal with, and that is trade Damian Lillard. Okay? At that point, you're probably going to use the pick as well, but you've decided that it is time to reset the button and get as much as you can in return for your superstar. Now, first off, let's go to the one option that people actually want to talk about. I think that is option number 1. What the Blazers could do with that number 3 overall pick. And unlike my man, our friend of the show, the Godfather, if you ask me, hey, Burkhardt, would you trade the number 3 overall pick for Joel Embiid? Yeah, I would. They're not going to do it, though. I don't care if they're not going to do it. I'm just asking, would you do it? And I would. Would you trade it for Jaylen Brown? And I think that's where it gets really interesting. Would you trade the number 3 overall pick and likely Anthony Simons and other pieces, because you're going to have to make money work, for Jaylen Brown? And the answer to that from me is yes. Because what is Jaylen Brown? Jaylen Brown is essentially the number 3 pick, but without the extra 2, 3, 4 years it's going to take for that pick to actually develop into the guy you want him to be. He's ready to go right now. And if the goal is to win in Dame's window, which we all believe it to be, then you trade that pick and you go get Jaylen Brown. Would you trade the number 3 overall pick for Mikal Bridges? I would not. I think Mikal Bridges, I think his trade value is a little bit inflated because of the fact that he was involved in the Kevin Durant trade. That was the guy that they had to put in just to get Kevin Durant. Yeah, and they also gave him a couple other players and 4 first-round picks. Like, there was a lot in that deal that enticed them to get rid of KD. And I think he looked good as a number 1 option. But the biggest thing with Mikal Bridges is I don't think anyone watches his game and says, okay, that's a number 1 option on a contending team. And the evidence you need is when he was on the stacked Phoenix Suns roster, what option was he? He wasn't option number 1. That's for sure. So you're getting a guy who has good defense, who is a good shooter, has good offense, but might just be your number 2. And if that's what you're giving up your number 3 pick, I don't think that's what you want to give it up for. At least not for him and his talent. Now I think where it gets really interesting is the talk of like a Pascal Siakam. You give the pick up for him. Some people say no. I say depends what the deal is because Pascal Siakam is a guy who's versatile. He can play the 5. He can play the 4. He could play the 3 in a big lineup. You could probably give him the ball and let him play point forward if you wanted. Very versatile. And he's going to guard all 5 positions. And for a big man, he's an incredible playmaker. So he gives you so much that you need. Now, if I was the Blazers and I was really interested in Pascal and they wanted the 3rd pick, I would talk, but I'd really start hardballing, right? Okay, you want the 3rd pick. We want Pascal. We think the value's high on that 3rd pick. So what does it take to get Pascal and OG Anunoby? Now you start wheeling and dealing, okay? Is that something that could happen? Probably not, but that's what you're talking about. That's what you're calling for. So there's a handful of players that I would absolutely trade that 3rd pick for. And if you get a massive upgrade at these positions of need, you got to do it. Even DeAndre Ayton, Chad, like people ask about that one, and it's like, would you trade the number 3 overall pick for DeAndre Ayton? Now, yeah, you'd have to talk about it a little bit, but here's the thing. He's a massive upgrade from what you're getting from Jusuf Nurkic. He's a former number 1 overall pick. There's other things you can do to upgrade your talents as well. And the thing, again, DeAndre Ayton is ready to go right now. The 3rd pick overall is an if, right?
I would trade the 3rd pick for Ayton if it involved a 3rd team where maybe you're getting a forward in exchange in addition to Ayton, let's say Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, and why I got you, I know that you say I don't have to include you, but I like to. I like to have my producers on when they actually know sports. Now, I don't think you said so DeAndre Ayton and Pascal Siakam in one summer home run. Why is it that the callers that we get, Dwight is one that's on this fence too, seem to think that getting that is so impossible given the fact that the number 3 pick is a huge asset. You have a first-round pick. You have the ability to unlock your Chicago picks. You have the young talent in Anthony Simons that people are going to want. Like, I don't think that getting 2 big-name guys is that far of a stretch.
I don't think it's a stretch at all. I think that number 3 pick, especially if Charlotte takes Brandon Miller, as we expect them to do, and Mitch Kupchak's comments after the lottery would indicate that that's probably where they're going to go, then the Blazers are going to be able to create a bidding war for Scoot Henderson, and that's going to put them in a good spot. So I think the Blazers are in a great position. Now, I have reordered the importance of what positions they need to address first, meaning I went into it about midway through the season around the trade deadline that in the offseason, I thought, okay, a wing player's number 1. And I still think the wing player's number 1. Number 2 at that time, I thought you're probably looking at upgrading the center position. But I have talked to a couple of people who have persuaded me that their lack of perimeter defense and length, if they were to go out before they address Nurk and add a backup wing or a guard to improve that defense and the rotation, I would be okay with that.
Yeah. Now, I personally, I think the first target is a forward, and I think the second target is a forward. I think center is the absolute least of your worries. I think if you get a good small forward and a good power forward, and do whatever you need to do with Jeremy Grant, whatnot, and just put that around Nurk, I think you're going to get a good version of Nurk. And I think Nurk's going to be just fine. Keith, my co-host on the Trailcaster podcast, what he said sounds weird at first, right? Because you're like, no, why are you even putting those two names together? But when you think about it, I think it makes sense. And that is when you're looking to upgrade your positions, right? You look at the fact that you started like Josh Hart for most of the year as small forward. Okay, the gap between Josh Hart at small forward and, say, a Jaylen Brown is a much bigger gap than the gap between Yusuf Nurkic and Joel Embiid, for instance, right?
No question.
And that point, to me, is like, that's why small forward, power forward is the key for the Blazers to get, because that is not saying Nurkic is anywhere near Joel Embiid. It's just saying that the gap between him and Embiid may be large, but the gap between Ant even and a Jaylen Brown is bigger. The gap between a Josh Hart and a Jaylen Brown is even bigger. So that's where you need to fix those gaps between the teams around you. So if you could go get an OG and a Siakam, home run. If you could get a Mikal and a Siakam, home run. Because in that case, maybe you didn't go get the one big guy. You didn't go get Embiid and pair him with Dame, but you got two legit guys at positions of need, got bigger. And say you went and got an OG on a Anunoby type, right? And you got Siakam. I'm just going to throw that out there because I think that one is plausible too. Get two guys, deal with one team, call it good. But even Mikal Bridges and Pascal Siakam, okay? Pascal Siakam can play the 4 and the 5. So let's just slot him at 4 next to Nurk, right? Mikal Bridges can play the 2 and the 3. So let's just slot him at the 2 next to Dame. And then you go and you re-sign your free agent in Jeremy Grant. I'm pretty okay if I'm rolling out a team, Chad, that is Dame, Mikal, Grant, Siakam, Nurk. Right? And if, again, we're just spitballing here, but if a team like that, you guess what? Now my shooting guard has defense. My small forward was a plus defender for me all year. Like, he was better than advertised. My power forward is a great defender. And now I have that defensive barrier you were talking about that doesn't leave Yusuf Nurkic on an island as much. And I think he's better in that situation.
The other name that I've heard that was thrown at me for a potential backup role player, because we know they need depth off the bench to fit that defensive type, Davion Mitchell.
Oh, I don't know where the incentive is or what it would take to get Sacramento to jump off him, but he's a good defender, man.
He's cheap.
He's a real good defender. And so, and I know that when I say this, Chad, and I'm throwing out big names, right? Mikal and Siakam and OG and Ayton. And those are just because those are the ones that we're hearing rumored most often.
Well, we know that the team has interest in OG. We know that for a fact.
Yeah, and those are the teams that we hear rumored, the guys we hear rumored most often. But the whole point is, it's just like that. There are moves to be made that I think can be made. I absolutely think OG's in play, and I think, again, I think Siakam is realistic. I think Mikal Bridges, I actually think he is the one that maybe not ends up coming to Portland, but I think he is way more available than anyone is getting at. These reports that Brooklyn is saying he's untouchable and there's no way, and they denied 4 picks from Memphis for him, and like I don't believe it.
I don't believe anything a team says today, weeks ahead of the draft and before free agency kicks off at the end of June. I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't buy that. And then even Jaylen Brown, I think it's easy to watch the Celtics start to fall apart and start thinking of that pipe dream. I just don't see the incentive for them to want to trade him. I see the Supermax coming his way. I see a team that knows that coaching is a major issue. They still have talent. They can fix that. But I would take him. Don't get me wrong. I would take Jaylen Brown all day long. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? And absolutely. And to my buddy Keith, who already texted me, he's like, "Oh, you're using my analogies. You listen to me." Yeah, I do. Every once in a while. Like 9% of the time, you have a pretty good take. I just don't always tell you about it because you get excited. I'm not about that. Don't want it to go to your head, big guy. My whole point is, man, I think there's moves to be made. Now, there's other options. We'll get to them in a second. But first, let's head out to the phones where Dave in Portland is ready to chime in. Dave, welcome into Courtside. What do you got for me?
Hey, guys. How you doing? Hey, couple things. One, I don't think you can get two guys at a high level simply because the contracts don't match. The only guys you got to get back to give that up in salary is Nurkic and Ant. So I don't see how you could possibly keep Nurkic and land a couple guys. Secondly, if Joe Cronin does not see that Jeremy Grant cannot be the power forward on a championship caliber team, not even close to it, then we have no hope. Like, how can you expect a guy that averages 4 rebounds a game to be your starting power forward? Slide him to the 3, no problem. The guy can defend on the perimeter. He's a decent shooter. That works. But I just don't, if they are still going forward with that thinking that he can be your power forward, I mean, we were struggling getting boards with Josh Hart, who's the best rebounding small forward in the league at the time. Then he goes, we couldn't get a board. And nothing's going to change. Like, this guy is 4 rebounds for his career.
Oh, yeah.
So I really hope they go after a power forward to go with Grant.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. I have been on this one since day one that I think Grant can play small forward and be fine. And offensively, with the way they used him this past year, Dave, he was more of a small forward anyway, because the way he sat in the corner, sat up top, tried to put the ball on the floor a little bit. Like, he played more of that forward spot, not that traditional back to the basket power forward that you think of. And then, yeah, that 4 rebound number is not something you want from your starting 4. So if you slide him at the 3, I'm good. I'm absolutely good. And then again, say you went and got a Siakam type player, okay? So now you put him at the 4 next to Nurk, and he's going to be your main rebounder in that duo, or at least buoy what Nurk does. Now you don't have to worry so much. And getting your 4 rebounds from your small forward position is a lot easier to stomach than getting it from your number 2 big man. And then if you do go trade for a Siakam, then Grant is your clear-cut number 3 guy. And then you're much better off when he's your clear-cut number 3 option. I think that was a problem this year. I argued early on that he had to be the team's number 2. And it wasn't because he is a true number 2. It was more just because I don't trust Ant to go be that guy every night. And Ant had an up and down year. But really, Grant is definitely more of your 3 option at best. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to say goodbye to an NBA legend. Blazer legend? I'll let you decide. Chris Burkhardt here on Courtside Monday on your home of the Blazers, Rip City Radio 620. Welcome back into Courtside Monday. Chris Burkhardt here with you as always. You can follow me on Twitter at Chris J. Burkhardt. Now, I wanted to talk about real quick before we talk about the retirement of an NBA legend. Our previous caller telling us about how money-wise he couldn't see things working with deals getting done and not trading Yusuf Nurkic. How I said, hey, what if you got 2 players and put them next to Nurk? It would depend on the 2 players you got, of course, but there are ways to get that done with how money works in the NBA. For instance, look at a Mikal Bridges and an OG Anunoby, right? Those 2 together. Like, OG Anunoby next year is only going to be making 18 mil. Mikal Bridges, 21. Why Ant is going to be making 24. So you could pair Ant with Little, and now your salaries are starting to match. And you have the first overall, or your first round pick, which counts as 0 if you trade it right now. But once you draft the player, his scale salary counts onto your books, and that salary counts in trades, I do believe, which would put his scale at like 8 mil with that pick. So you could draft Scoot Henderson, right? And then trade him for later in the night and have that money be factored in. And that's almost $8 million right there. So now you're starting to mix and match a little bit. That $8 million plus Keon Johnson with your, or excuse that $8 million plus Nasir Little. Okay, that right there within your trade parameters is enough to land you OG Anunoby, right? And then, Ant, whatever. Like, the point is there's ways. Ant plus the 23rd pick and future picks for Mikal, there is ways. Hard, but there's ways to make that money work without getting rid of Nurk. Just depends on what the player is. Now, if you're going with Siakam and his $30 million, then yeah, Nurkic is probably likely involved in deals like that. But where there's a will, there's a way. And if there's one thing I've learned in covering this league, and I know Chad has as well, is sometimes you think a team has $0 to spend, and they find ways to find lots of dollars to spend. There are ways for these teams to get what they want. Just saying. All right. Now, I said I wanted to say goodbye to an NBA legend. After 19 years, he announced this morning that he wasn't going to be playing anymore. The one, the only Carmelo Anthony has decided to hang him up and officially retire. An NBA legend, a Blazer legend, just for the COVID era alone. But coming back in after a brief hiatus where he felt nobody wanted him. The Blazers needed help. They needed depth. They went to the Carmelo Anthony well, rejuvenated his career, and he ended up getting, 3 more years out of it? Because he got 2 with the Blazers and then ended up getting that 1 with the Lakers as well. And an absolute star. Came in with the LeBron James draft, was right there nipping at LeBron James all year for the Rookie of the Year that year. I thought Melo could have won it, should have won it back when I was a little kid watching it 19 years ago. But still, he's one of the all-time greats. Now, one-dimensional, yeah. He was a scoring machine, a certified bucket, as they call him. Defense was an afterthought, but Melo was a vibe, an absolute vibe, and he's a legend. And I think the 2 years that Portland had him were incredible. Because sometimes you just need something to root for when the season gets a little crazy, and rooting for Melo was fun. He had his moments. He had his game winners, like the one in Toronto on the road. And I must say, interacting with him and watching him in locker rooms, he was something else. He was an absolute pro's pro when it came to dealing with the media. This guy sat there, and you would see reporter scrums everywhere you go. You'd be in New York, of course. Every single media outlet was out there wanting to talk to Melo. And then you're in OKC. Everyone wants to talk to Melo. Charlotte, Indiana, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody wants to talk to Melo and ask him, what's it like to be back in the league? And they all ask the same exact question every single night. And every single night, Melo, with a big old smile on his face, answered every single question. I think, we would always want to talk to him, just because, he had a decent game. We wanted to know what, the local stories. We didn't care about the return anymore. And, it was just, we'd get in the scrum, ask the question, and then leave while the scrum just stayed there. I think there was one spot, it might have been Chicago or something, where we, were on one side of the locker room, and then Melo went to the other, and then all the media went over there, and he went to the other side. He was just messing with us the whole time, and then he just starts laughing. He's like, all right, I'll do the interview now. But he was a good guy while he's in Portland. And I think gave fans something to root about. And the F out of here for every rebound that the poor Blazer broadcasting crew had to, mute every single time because you could hear it picked up on the mics was entertaining, to say the least. But he was great. He was absolutely great. I think it was a cool opportunity to, cover the team during that point in time where you had an absolute legend on your team. Dame is a legend, but man, the aura that Melo had was just different. Even washed up Melo had that aura, man. And it was fun. It was absolutely fun to be around and fun to watch, whether he was in Portland or Denver or New York or Houston or OKC or his short-lived legendary stint with the Atlanta Hawks. Which, by the way, I did see the Atlanta Hawks posted, thank you, Melo posts. When every other team was posting pictures of him or a highlight video, they posted a picture of just the back of a Carmelo Anthony Hawks jersey that was made but never worn. If you could, don't you wish you could get a Rasheed Wallace Hawks jersey for just the one game that he was an Atlanta Hawk? I'd want one. Rasheed's the man. I'm going to go get a Carmelo Anthony jersey now. All right, Blazer fans, that does it for Courtside Monday. I'll be back next Monday. Actually, I won't. It's Memorial Day. I'm going to take a break, as should you. Be back after that. Rip City Drive will be back tomorrow, though. You guys have been awesome. Thanks for tuning in. As always, Rip City, I love you.